Macapagal-Arroyo declared in December 2002 that she would not contest the May 2004 presidential election, but she reversed herself in October 2003 and decided to run. She was re-elected and sworn in for her own 6-year term as president on June 30, 2004. With this new mandate, she was able to move with greater assurance on the political and economic reform agenda that had stalled during her first term in office, but ultimately she got bogged down by corruption charges, and her second term is remembered most for the numerous attempts to impeach her. Arroyo was elected as president in June 2004. This was the first time that she was elected to the office. She initially became president in 2001 after Estrada was ousted through an election. Arroyo said changed her mind to run for president because the lack of decent candidates made it her duty to run. Insiders said she initially decided not to run because of incessant sniping and attacks by her critics, but changed her mind after much prayer and a meeting with the Pope because she figured the attacks would continue even if she wasn't president, so she might as well run.
Hello guys, ma'am. Nag-usap na kayo ni Abalos. Ma'am. May problema sa South UP. Pero lokal. Kasi iba-iba raw ang pinaklaim ng Commonwealth noon. Sino ba atin doon? Naku, ang importante na hindi madama yung sa taas.
After the 2004 presidential elections, there were reports that Arroyo conspired with an election commissioner to rig the election, and Estrada conspired to assassinate Arroyo. John O. Calyahan of Reuters wrote, "The Hello Garci tapes were a series of audio recordings allegedly featuring Arroyo talking by telephone with former election commissioner Virgilio Garciliano about rigging the presidential election on May 10, 2004. Arroyo's fuss in Congress and in regular street protests are pressing demands. She stepped down but the turmoil has largely subsided without the middle class angered.
Maliwanag na may kakulangan sa wastong pagpapasya ang nangyaring pagtawag sa telepono. Pinagsisisihan ko ito ng lubos.
Arroyo began her second term with a hostage crisis in Iraq, promises of austerity and simplicity, and the announcement of a reform package to fight corruption, attract foreign investment, improve education, and make the Philippines less dependent on foreign energy. But not much of any good happened. By mid-2005, weeks of political turmoil combined with a Supreme Court freeze on one of Arroyo's key economic reforms put a cloud over Philippine financial markets while the central bank vigorously defended the peso. In 2005, Carlos H. Conde wrote in the New York Times, "Analysts believe Arroyo squandered the opportunities provided by people power to move the country forward. She got busy paying political debts," said Benito Lim, a political analyst at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance. Zhongxing Telecommunications Equipment, or ZTE, a Chinese state-linked manufacturing giant that sells communications gear in more than 140 countries, allegedly paid tens of millions of dollars in kickbacks in connection with a 2007 contract. Among those charged in connection with the case were former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, her husband, and 2 other former senior officials. Andrew Higgins wrote in a Washington Post, "Among those charged with graft is Benjamin Abalos Sr., the former head of the Election Commission. According to testimony during hearings by the Philippine Senate, Abalos took large kickbacks from ZTE in connection with a contract for the construction of a broadband network and fed some $30 million into the campaign coffers of Philippine politicians ahead of a 2007 election." His Manila attorney, Gabby Villarreal, said, "Abalos categorically denies receiving any money from ZTE. Claims that he did," the attorney said, "are just hearsay." In July 2005, Jose Miguel Mike Arroyo, President Arroyo's husband, left for the U.S. amid corruption allegations while his wife faced allegations of election rigging. Associated Press reported Arroyo's corruption-tainted husband left yesterday for self-imposed exile in the U.S. as part of the embattled leader's efforts to distance herself from political scandals that threaten her government. Jose Miguel Mike Arroyo, a lawyer from a prominent family, has been accused of influence peddling and receiving kickbacks from illegal gambling. He is sad, his lawyer Jesus Santos said. He wants to leave so that the president can do her work. He feels bad. He is saddened by reports that are erroneous. Santos stressed that Arroyo's husband was leaving on his volition. In March 2012, Mike Arroyo was arrested on charges that he received millions of dollars in bribes to push through an overpriced $330 million contract with a Chinese telecoms supplier ZTE while Arroyo was in office. Arroyo endured and completed her 6-year term in 2010. Altogether, she was the president of the Philippines for 9 years from 2001 to 2010. At the Association for Asian Studies 2010 conference in Philadelphia in March 2010, David Timberman outlined 4 contrasts that he sees in the Arroyo legacy. First is the contested legitimacy and unpopularity with the administration's remarkable staying power and vitality. Next is the continued defensiveness of the administration in the face of these attacks versus the success in making policy. Third is the effective wielding of presidential powers with the marginalization of other potential policymakers. And lastly, number 4, the lack of significant new investment or jobs in the Philippines and prevailing poverty despite sustained GDP growth. Stephen Rood of the Asia Foundation wrote, overall World Bank government's indicators show a decided mixed Arroyo legacy. Between 2000 and 2008, there was a steady increase in government effectiveness and rule of law, while at the same time a steady decline in political stability, voice, and accountability and control of corruption. Among her achievements was her SMART 2003 Roll-on, Roll-off Maritime Initiative, which brought down the cost of shipping among the Philippine Islands by 30 to 40%. Since President Arroyo announced in 2001 a switch from former President Estrada's all-out war policy to one of all-out peace, significant though sporadic progress has been made between the government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Most recently, after an outbreak of fighting in late 2008, peace talks began once again in late 2009. International monitoring teams are on the ground and an international contact group is assisting in the negotiations. Focus now is on maintaining the peace, preserving the gains of the past years through negotiation, and handing off to the incoming administration, whomever it may be, on July 1. In the meantime, the very real dangers of relying on local strongmen for support both in politics and in counter-insurgency was demonstrated by the November 23 election-related massacre in Maguindanao that left 57 people dead. Gwendolyn Bevis of Management Systems International described the result of studies of the budgetary process which President Arroyo has managed to dominate and manipulate throughout her administration. Aside from particular moves to withhold pork barrel allocations for opposition legislatures and to reduce the amount of influence Congress has on the budget, presidential power was increased by a general trend toward lump sum appropriation and the discretionary use by the president of the previous year's savings. A sophisticated budgetary team with the persistence to examine the entire budget to maximize the effect.